I have to say, you've had some tremendous insight on this Ben Simmons situation. And from the get go, you were pretty much right on the money in terms of saying Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons cannot coexist. I want to ask you, why were people like on the opposite side of things, like so enthusiastic about this combination working when it seemed very obvious that it's kind of oil and water in terms of these two guys on the floor, and it's just blown up into like an impossible situation?
I mean, I think the mistake was 2 years ago they could have realized this and probably gotten the absolute max for Ben Simmons. Anybody would have traded for him then. It's not, it's hard to say like what specifically I would have seen even then that told me. But I remember talking to NBA people about it and asking them, like, do you think that this pairing is going to get them to the championship or the finals? And everyone kind of had a wry smile and just would shake their head. But I think it's, what we see now, where he is a guy who shies away from the ball, doesn't want to get fouled because of free throws, won't shoot the ball when he's on the perimeter, so his man can really gum up the works. We saw that last night with Russell Westbrook and what his man in the video I'm preparing for tomorrow. Please watch it. I know it's late. It's supposed to come out today, but watch it tomorrow or whenever we listen to this, watch it because you can see how much damage when you can ignore a guy in the perimeter, how much damage that man, that person's defender can do to the rest of the offense. And especially when you get to the playoffs, when you can really prepare that stuff. So that was always a big issue with him. And the way he played, it was strange that not a lot of offenses for the role he was playing in the offense would just have him go stand on the weak side near the basket and just kind of stand there and kind of hide. It was weird. The coaches, I don't think, wanted him to do that, and they might have told him not to, but he would continue to do that. So there's a possibility that he doesn't maybe listen to the coaches as much and he wants to do what he wants to do. It's a possibility that he, training-wise and why he's not improving is because of that. But I did posit this on Twitter the other day where I wanted to be sympathetic to Ben Simmons because it's quite possible that he's had bad coaching, let's say, for the jump shot. And nobody he's worked with knows properly how to teach it. And so it might feel futile to him where he's just breaking. I'm working as hard as I can. It's not working. And that can change you. That can make you an upset person, and a guy on edge all the time. And he kind of feels that way now. And any little thing can set him off. And that's sort of what happened with the end of the Game 7, loss against the Hawks last year. So, there's a lot of blame to go around in this whole scenario. But as it is, it doesn't sound like neither side wants really to make this thing work at all, even though they had said that they tried, they wanted to make that happen before he showed up randomly. But it's clear that Ben Simmons wanted to kind of probably get thrown out of practice. And it's clear that Doc Rivers was going to put him in a situation where he was going to have to throw him out, which I don't think he needed to do that, but he did. And so now it'll be awkward. It was awkward probably today when they had a practice or when they're probably playing today, but the next practice they have is going to be awkward tomorrow.
So you mentioned in terms of his shooting that he, like a puzzle, you're trying to figure out kind of what exactly is the best remedy to fix that. And I'm just wondering, it seems to me that he has all the resources in the world to solve this problem in terms of his affiliation with Clutch Sports, and he's Ben Simmons. So I'm just wondering if he does go to a different team, like what is the probability of that happening? Just because he is physically gifted, and just seeing your breakdowns and just seeing everybody break down his game, the guy can ball. Like that's what's so baffling to me. It's not like he's inept offensively. Like this guy, right. I mean, he has the talent there, but for some reason it's just not materializing on the offensive end of the floor. So I'm just wondering, in terms of when he does get traded, like, do you see any team really being the best fit to really extract the positives out of Ben Simmons' games?
Well, I think it's really hit or miss what kind of coaching you're going to get from one team to the other, and even specifically with shooting. Having studied it as much as I do, and also connecting with as many people as I can to learn as much about this and how to communicate. It's two different things. It's really the attention to detail. What are you trying to teach him? And I've seen a workout of his a little bit, and it's not happening. Like who he's working with now, they're not doing him the service. It's his brother and whoever else the Clutch Sports is using. So that's part of it. But then it's also the communication of it. Because remember, if you want to tell anybody, that their jump shot isn't working, you're basically telling them like their girlfriend is ugly. And you have to be able to approach that in a very specific way so that you're not going to then turn the person off right away. They're not going to listen to you at that point. So it's not easy. And it takes, it takes a lot of, tact to figure out how to communicate that properly in a very detail-oriented way. And the rhythm is really the most important commodity we're talking about. And I don't know if enough coaches recognize how important that is and how to develop that out of him. Because again, he's probably shooting with the wrong hand. I don't see that changing. I know Tristan Thompson switched to his right hand or his left hand when he's shooting free throws, but he's not a perimeter player. We're talking about Simmons needing to be able to shoot from farther out. So I just don't think he'd ever really risk trying to just switch hands like he should. But as a result, you can still help him with the left hand shooting, but the alignment is not there and the rhythm is not there, and that's really a big issue. Plus, then it becomes a thing where he doesn't mentally want to take the shots,
Sure.
And that's another thing you have to get him over. But again, I don't blame him. He probably shoots very poorly in the practices too. So it's, there's no reservoir of confidence out of that he can use when he plays in these games.
One last question for you on the Ben Simmons situation, and that's Doc Rivers. He seems to be kind of downplaying it in practice, but kind of the damage was done right after just Simmons' last playoff performance. Is there anything that Doc Rivers can do to reconcile the situation, or he just should request to trade this guy off my team immediately as soon as possible? Right. Is there any kind of way to reconcile the situation, or is it just it's done? For my coaching?
Well, Doc's an interesting character because in all of this, because he's a former player and he comes from an era where most of those former players would have probably punched Ben Simmons in the face, right? And been like, get the hell out of here. But he also has a reputation as being a player's coach. That said, it doesn't seem like he has a goal. And again, I'm not really in these. I'm not in the practices. I don't know all the details. Some of them leaked out, but it sounded a little bit like they were doing some sort of walkthrough with the team. They had a guy like Maxey, whatever, probably playing in Simmons' spot. So then they told Simmons, well, you get on defense. Like, you go to the B team, right? And it's probably was a thing that he might have been, insulted by. And Doc probably didn't have to do that, but he was probably looking at Ben, who's half-assing the whole time anyway. He was like, let's test this out and see how he's going to react by me putting him in the second team, whatever, right? And, of course, it came out badly. Now, back in the day, Kevin Garnett, if he was on this team, would have probably grabbed him by around the shoulder, pulled him in the corner, and had a real heart-to-heart talk with him. There is no leadership that's doing that, right? So is the goal to bring Ben Simmons back on this team and actually get him to function and play and be part of this team for the next 4 years like they have him under contract? That's why it doesn't sound like that's the case, because, this is what Embiid should be doing. It's probably what Doc should be doing. Doc should have been like, hey, guys, to his assistants, run this drill. I'm going to go talk to Ben on my own. Now, maybe he's tried doing that, but it sounds like Ben's been pretty isolated and not been talking to anybody. And at least I think he deserves that and to try that. If that hasn't been done, to just break down this whatever wall this is and try and get through, because again, if that is the goal. Now, the problem is if you have the goal of integrating back into your team and being a productive member of the team, then you're not going to throw them out of practice. You're not going to put them in situations like that, right? You're going to try and direct them the other way. This is the Ted Lasso version of what you would do with a guy like this. And I got to tell you, having been on the other kind of coach for a long time and kind of been awakened or enlightened by what you see in that show. I know it's a scripted show, but there are very fundamental methods of communication that he's using that we now practice in real life, and it's just a real joy to be able to see it on screen. Hopefully, it influences more people, but I don't know if Doc has that in his bag.
Do you think this Ben Simmons situation could be a warning, for instance, for other players in terms of kind of the player coach dynamic, just in terms of, like you said, Doc Rivers not handling correctly, and just it's just human nature. These are two human beings at the end of the day, and they're on this team for now. And do you think this could be kind of a case study in terms of how to handle the situation in the future for these new type of players, these Gen Z players? I mean, this is very different from, previous generations of players. They have their own kind of sensibilities in a way that you would normally, talk to a player in this situation, 20 years ago, like you mentioned. It's not going to fly now. It's just not going to happen. So do you think this could be maybe a situation in which, coaches and players could learn from, and maybe it could be a positive towards kind of this type of situation happening again?
I would hope so. And I hope maybe what I'm saying out there and people listening to this would take it to heart. I know that there's a huge contingency of people like coaches who have been doing it for a long time, feel very confident in what they understand and know, and don't seem to want to necessarily expand that and feel like this is how I would do it, which and would call me weak and would call me, soft and all these different things. When in reality, it doesn't really have to go toward, the toxic masculinity of using the same methods that aren't working with Ben Simmons on me to argue your point.
Sure.
When it's really what we're trying to talk about is look at, like I said, what is the goal? And in a lot of times you'll see coaches not have a goal. That's when they lose their minds and start just detonating all over their players. They don't have a goal. It's all it's all emotion, and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do to fix it. So they just have to yell and scream and hope that works. And it probably has worked for them in the past, or in their mind they stored it in there thinking, okay, I've won games, so clearly me yelling at these guys like that really must work. And it's not really the case. I kind of would argue that it's probably in spite of that kind of stuff that your teams were successful. And there's probably a lot of other ways and other things you're doing that are good that get them to the point where they can win a lot of games. So I hope that we're moving to that. I do feel like the younger coaches are coming in a little bit more open and understanding and researching this stuff better. We have more resources for coaches too.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm part of that resource reservoir. And so as a result, I remember when I was a young coach, there were books you could read. But not a lot of other things and other examples to really learn from. So I hope that this does something. But, in guys like Doc's, generation, generally, and I hate to generalize, but you'll see a lot of guys that age and older who just they don't change. That's who they are. They've won a lot of games, and I get it. But it would be nice to see if they could try another tack and not do the throwing him out of practice route and grab him by the scruff of the neck and get in his face and screaming and yelling. Have a talk with them. Find out exactly what it is. I mean, it might end up coming to the point where he's like, listen, F you. I don't want to be here. You said some horrible things to me all throughout this playoffs, whatever, and I'm done. But, I think if that was the case, then you won't get in these situations where it just looks bad for everybody and it's going to delay the trade because other teams are going to be like, whoa, is this guy a jerk? I don't think we want him in the locker room. When it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And then they're going to be stuck with him, and either not paying him or paying him.
Yeah.
Distraction, headache. Bottom line is holding them back from being the best team they can.